Good day. My name is Scott Kinney with Discovery Education, and it is my pleasure to be joined with Mark Barnes for our One Idea series. Mark is a classroom teacher for 20 years, has just recently stepped out of the classroom, is now a consultant and author, recently authored the book Role Reversal, Achieving Uncommonly Excellent Results in the Student-Centered Classroom, has a new book coming up that will be published through Corwin on assessment. And Mark, one of the things that struck me in our previous conversation was I think, my kid's school system actually right now is going through a transition to standards-based reporting. And I think a lot of school systems across the country think that's pretty progressive when you make that transition. You're advocating for something different, I think pushing the envelope even a little bit further, which is let's get rid of kind of how we think about grading altogether. So could you talk a little bit about that concept with us?
Yeah, Scott, I think that standards-based grading is a step in the right direction. I would like to see us go one step further, and I'd like to eliminate grades and measuring completely. I think that even with standards-based, I think we're taking some sort of a measuring tool, and we're using that to put learning against and to measure learning. And I think it's really difficult to measure learning. I think if we want to see how well kids achieve, we need to make it a conversation. The best way to know when kids are doing well is to talk to them about learning and to say, how well have you done? Let's talk about it. So I really think that we should throw out all kinds of grading, all kinds of measuring, and make it a conversation. And I prefer a narrative feedback and to talk to kids about it.
Now, Mark, where does that stop? I mean, is that at the classroom level? Do they take their state exams and you think this kind of translates into that? Do they stop taking pieces altogether? Where does that end, that philosophy?
Well, I like to think that maybe it doesn't end. And that's a really important question, and it's one that I get a lot because for people in the K-12 world who are in favor of it, and there's a lot of pushback because we're so stuck in the grade world because that's what we've always done. The people who then say, "Wow, this sounds like a good idea." The first thing is, well, what do we do to get kids to college? Because college people rely on grades and GPAs, and so that's a conversation that's an important one to have, and it can be done. There's a whole lot of ways to assess learning. In the digital world, there's so many things that can be done. First of all, with portfolio assessment, we can put everything online now. So I think that from the beginning, when we're assigning work to kids, we need to think about projects. We need to think about putting everything online. We need to have the assessments in a place where kids can be a part of that, where they can assess themselves. That's the other thing. We need to look at having kids do a lot of self-assessment, and we can put those in a place where they can carry those with them. I mean, they can put them in the palm of their hands.
So one of the things that you mentioned, I don't know if protocol is the right word, but SE2R. So, I mean, is that a protocol? Maybe I'm using the wrong word there, but could you describe that a little bit and how that fits into this philosophy?
It's I guess you could call it a model, you could call it a formula. When I eliminated grades years ago, I needed something. I said, I want to talk to kids about learning, and I want to stop measuring them, but we need something that they can look at, that parents can look at, that guidance counselors, anyone can look at and say, what can I actually have in my hand? And so if it was going to be a narrative, it still needed to be something that was somewhat simple. So SE2R is an abbreviation I came up with, and I think it's revolutionary in its simplicity, but it's not revolutionary in that it's something that everyone would have to use. You could come up with your own abbreviation for that matter. What it stands for is summarize, explain, redirect, and resubmit. And to me, the key to it is we want to tell kids what they've done. I think we miss that a lot. We don't always say, here's what I saw. And it's really important to do that. And then we give kids guidelines. All teachers do. Here's a step-by-step method of doing something to demonstrate learning. So based on those instructions, here's what we saw exactly, or here's maybe what we didn't see. And then also to talk to the kids, what did you do? What did you see? And then the real key are those two R's. And I think in education, we leave this out. And it's too critical in learning to leave this out. To say, well, I didn't quite see this. Could you do this? And a lot of times kids will say, well, yeah, I can. But for some reason, I didn't. Sometimes they forgot. And we leave that out. We just say, okay, well, you forgot, but we're going to move on to the next thing because we're always in such a hurry to get to the next activity or objective. When we should stop. We need to slow down education and say, well, let's go back. Let's go to prior learning. Let's go to this lesson. Let's go to this model. And let's revisit it. And then let's rework it. And then finally, let's resubmit. Let's go back and let's see that you have it. Because this is where mastery learning comes in. And I think we're missing that.
Is it partly a coverage issue? I mean, I would imagine you hear all the time, but Mark, I don't have time for this. I have to move on because I have to cover everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Time is precious, and teachers fear that they don't have enough of it. And this is systemic. This is a systemic problem because we have standards, and we have a bureaucracy that continues to dictate to educators that we have to cover so many things in such a short amount of time so we can race through this school year and get kids through this amount of standards so they can get to the next level. So that is a problem, and it becomes a part of what needs to be an ongoing conversation about how to do this right.
Yeah. So if I'm a teacher or a principal or a superintendent watching this and say to myself, I want to learn more. So, clearly I think the next step is I'm going to buy your book and read up on it a little bit. But after that, how do I get started? I mean, you mentioned, bureaucratic process or systems process. It seems like there's a lot of layers to this. There's the parent community, there's the education community, but there's even the kind of the state systems. Where do you begin?
Yeah, that's a great question, Scott, and one that is an important one to consider. In my new book, Assessment 3.0, I talk about what I call a grassroots effort, and I think you've touched upon it because you mentioned all the important stakeholders. And oftentimes in education, we leave out a lot of the stakeholders. And what we need to understand is that the people involved in the entire education process are the students, the parents, the administrators, the teachers, the community. We need to talk to all of these people and pull them together and say, we're taking a different approach. I've worked with schools, and this is great. This has been really rewarding for me since I've left the classroom. When role reversal came out, I had a wonderful opportunity to get out in front of teachers who were excited about this and said, wow, this looks like something that could really change education in our schools. And I've gotten in front of teachers who've said, we love this idea, help us do this. And they have taken this approach. They've said, let's pull people in. And they've brought in parents and said, this is what we want to do. And that's such an important first step to say, this will benefit your kids. That's key. Because oftentimes in education, administrators, and not meaning harm, they just sort of jump. And sometimes teachers as well, saying, I think I want to do this because it'll be good for kids, so let's just do it. And we miss that step of pulling in parents and saying, we're going to do this because this is how it will benefit your child. And what I have found and heard from the teachers that I've worked with who have taken that approach of pulling in parents and saying that we're going to do this because it will help is that it has gone so far. And then I've heard from parents who have, exchanged emails with me and said, boy, this is really amazing. My child has embraced education like never before because they're not punished by grades. My child used to get D's and F's and hated learning, and now they're having these conversations about learning, and they're eager to go to the next step because they don't feel that fear. I actually had a parent not long ago tell me she used to be so afraid to do something because she said, well, I'll just get an F. And now she said, I'm not afraid anymore. Now, that's really amazing.
That is amazing. So let me just reiterate Mark Barnes' role reversal currently at ASCD. If you're interested in that, go to ASCD. On Corwin, early 2015 is the Assessment 3.0, which talks a little bit more about the SE2R model. And so I'll wrap it up there. Mark, thank you so much for your time. This is Mark Barnes, again, former educator, well, never a former educator, right? Educator, consultant, author, discovery educator, I might add. This is One Idea with Mark Barnes. Thanks so much for your time, Mark.
Scott, I appreciate it. It's been great.